welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Nonprofit Show. I've really been excited about this conversation coming up. We're talking to two amazing experts all about things interim and interim leadership. This is one of the big, in my book, top 3 issues for 2025. And so this is really exciting. Randy Brinson and Julia Burns are joining us today. As Julia Burns said, from opposite ends of the nation. Welcome, both of you.
Thank
you.
you. It's great to be here.
Thanks. We're really excited to talk about this. I have so many questions for you. I know a lot of our viewers are going to have questions. So let's get into it, because one of the things we never have questions about are our presenting sponsors. They come to us from Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, JMT Consulting, our friends over at Third Sector Company, Your Part-Time Controller, and Fundraisers Friday. Fundraisers Friday are our new episodes just dedicated to fundraisers. And so it's really been a lot of fun, and I hope if you have a connection to fundraising, you're joining us on those Fridays. Again, I'm Julia C. Patrick, American Nonprofit Academy CEO. I was teasing Julia Burns. We never have another Julia on an episode. So this got our executive producer all messed up. We kind of like that. We like teasing him. But anyway, Julia Burns, I'm delighted that you're another Julia. Randy Brinson, let's start with you as senior strategist for Third Sector Company. Talk to us about what the Third Sector is and what the Third Sector Company does.
Thank you, Julie. It's great to be here with you and my other Julia colleague. The third sector is a term that we often hear referring to the nonprofit sector. What are the first 2 sectors? Well, there's the public sector, which is government, and the private sector, which is our friends in the corporate world. And then the third sector is the nonprofit sector. And Third Sector Company is a small firm, small but mighty firm that has been formed to really create and foster leadership continuity solutions for the nonprofit sector. And those include, of course, interim executive resources. And today, more specifically, we're talking about succession planning, which is also, of course, very much a leadership continuity and talent continuity issue.
Huge issue. Well, Julia Burns, my sister that comes to me from Florida, welcome. Talk to us about clarity, because we all need clarity, don't we?
We all need clarity. I have a partner in the practice. We're a 2-person consulting, boutique consulting firm, and we work at the intersection of strategy, talent, and culture. So we spend a lot of our time working on succession, getting organizations ready, and then when it comes to a transition, helping that organization make a smooth transition. And Randy and I have been colleagues talking about this. It feels like forever in a good way, Randy.
Indeed.
Well, I feel like this is just the moment for this conversation. We have an aging population. We have a retiring leadership demographic that is, out of there. I mean, they stayed probably longer than they wanted to because of the pandemic, a lot of them, and they're getting ready to move on to a different phase of their life. It's just a time of a lot of change. And so I feel like this is just one of those things that is only going to pick up steam. And so I'm really interested in having this conversation with you two. And let's start off with the question, what does a strong succession plan look like? And is it just for like the ones, the CEO, or does it go across the board? What does that look like to you? Julia, let's kick this off with you.
Sure. I think one of our challenges about succession is we don't have a standard definition or understanding of what it is. Mm-hmm. So we think about it in different ways. We think in our group that succession planning is having this holistic, thoughtful strategy about your talent pipeline that both makes it effective more today and then also readies it in the organization for tomorrow. And succession planning really has a couple different pieces to it. One of them is strategic, just thinking about who's in your talent pipeline, how you're developing them, who has access to development, to promotion, those kinds of things. And that all really reflects in retention at the same time, but it's a strategic part of thinking about succession over time and how to get your people ready. It also strategically thinks about one of the challenges. Not only do we have an aging leadership and people ready to retire, what we're hearing pretty consistently is that younger folks are saying, I don't think I want that role as a CEO. So strategically thinking about what we need to change that to. And then there's the whole tactical part. And this is where most nonprofits tend to focus on for succession, is the tactical getting ready for a transition, making decisions ahead of time. You can certainly make it easier by planning for it, even though you don't know when it'll happen, because eventually we all leave our jobs.
Mm-hmm. You know, Randy, this is what I would call a hair on fire moment. Julia said a lot of things that are kind of freaking me out, making me a little uncomfortable. And I'm thinking we're way behind on these conversations. So what are you seeing? I know you live in, in the West Coast, and yet you have a definitely, you're connected across this planet with folks doing this work, but still, what are you seeing, and how do you feel like the temperature is?
Well, I would agree with Julia Burns completely that one of the key things to think about in terms of strong succession planning is that we think of it as a holistic dynamic, not as a specific task for a particular position. And one of the ways that we like to think about it, and we've talked with Julia and our other colleagues about this, is that it's all rooted in this idea that the people in our organization are the most important asset that we have.
Yeah.
And so if we have a cause that our organization is pursuing in the community, the best way for us to sustain success in that cause is make sure we have a good talent pipeline of the people that we need to achieve that work. And I do a lot of presenting around this area, and one of the things that we remind people is that it's important to think a little bit about the terminology. You referred to this just a second ago with your question: is succession planning about a single position at the top, or is it about the whole organization? And that's really a great question for people to think about as we look at succession planning and the terms that the vocabulary that we use in that. We could realize that the thought of one person leaving at the top of the organization and planning for that person's vacancy, that's not really succession planning. That's transition planning. That's focused on a particular position. And so that's one of the terms that's part of the succession planning process. And another term that we use is career planning, and Julia can talk very articulately about this, but that's about focusing on the individual in the organization and helping them prepare for their future within the organization or perhaps outside the organization. That helps with retention, which also obviously helps reduce turnover and helps with succession. And those kinds of planning, transition planning and career planning, are both elements of the larger succession planning picture that we like to tell people about.
Right. You know, Julia Burns, you sent chills down my spine when you said you're seeing more and more folks saying that, I call next gen leadership, saying, yeah, I don't know if that's where I want to go. Or talk to us a little bit about this in terms of, how organizations are getting this right. Are they hearing this? Are they thinking about the work environment enough? Or is it just next up? Like, okay, you're on the bench, get up. I mean, because it seems to me this is a bigger issue than just who's gonna sign the checks next, right?
Yeah, it's a huge issue, and different organizations are dealing with it differently. But organizations that have really people first leadership, they're very considerate about who's what kind of skill you have, who has exposure to, even just thinking about the CEO position, who has exposure to the board, who has external exposure. All of these things, and they help with risk management too, just on a running your business basis. But that it's not widely considered. And I know we really regionally vary. So the practices in the Pacific Northwest are different than the ones that you'll see in the South quite often. So we see a lot of boards still thinking about this is more of a transaction. I'm going to replace CEO A with CEO B. Whereas really it's a great chance to be thinking about, should we be rethinking the job? And is it an opportunity to be thinking about how we move forward the best way?
You know, it's so interesting that you would mention this, Julia, because I feel like it's such an emotional topic. First of all, I'm always shocked when I speak predominantly with board members who have never heard of the concept of interim leadership, and what that looks like, and how it's structured. Number one, but number two, I feel like when the fear of being pushed out or aging out or whatever environment exists, that it's really hard to start the conversation of succession planning, almost unless it comes from that CEO. And I'm curious as to what you see. I mean, when I think about boards saying we need to have a succession plan, I almost see like the CEO saying, "What, you want to get rid of me?" It's just crazy, but it seems like it's one of those things. I mean, Randy, do you see that happening in this fragile ecosystem?
That's definitely an issue, and I think it comes back to this idea of this partial I was about to say misconception, but this partial understanding of succession planning as being something that's limited to replacing a position or filling a position at the top. And if that's our definition of succession planning, and as you said earlier, there are a lot of emotions that are wrapped up in the process of people leaving and people coming. And if a leader at the top is leaving, what does that mean for me if I'm farther down in the organization? So there's this natural reticence to have discussion about succession planning based on this idea that it's about replacing somebody at the top. If we can get more people to understand, no, it is that, but it's also more than that. It's about creating this continuity of human talent that we need for our organization to achieve its mission. And let's talk about that. Let's talk as a group, as a board, as a staff, as a senior leadership team. Let's talk about the possibilities and the necessities that we want to bring to the table and kick around to help make sure that this organization has the talent that we need, not only now but going forward. So if we can shift the conversation in that direction, I think we're going to see a less clenched expressions, facial expressions when the topic comes up.
Julia, it's an interesting thing because I feel like you're having to educate our sector is why we need this. We're dealing with this because we have a changing leadership environment. And yet it's the concept is somewhat new, right? I mean, not everybody understands how the interim position works, as we were chatting about earlier. So how do you see us creating a standard for excellence? Like, how do you see us as a sector beginning to understand what we should be talking about and how we should be embracing this?
So we just talking about it, and it's becoming more common to talk about it. The challenges around retention over the last few years and finding workforce and keeping workforce has done quite a bit actually to elevate the conversation overall. So if you say retention, usually a CEO's ears are going to perk up, or someone who is in charge of hiring. So they've started looking at and thinking about it that way. The work around inclusion and belonging has been, I think, really important in elevating some of the practices that go with this and making your workplace a really strong, welcoming workplace. We're starting to see conferences talk about it. So Randy speaks about it frequently. I've spoken at several conferences about this as well. That's coming up. We're seeing funders start to ask for, but this is a little more of a checkbox right now, do you have a succession plan? And they don't really specify what that means, what the expectations of it are, but it's starting to show up. And what we're finding is, as we're talking about it more, we're getting we're getting requests right now about, hey, I'm thinking 3 to 5 years. This is on the horizon. And that's a great time frame to start thinking about, okay, here's things that you can start putting into place to get it ready. Because if it's, hey, I'm leaving in 6 months, right, then you're into a full-on transition.
Right. I think it's fabulous, Randy. You brought this up, the concept of transition versus the strategic aspect. Wow, for a lot of people, that's not going to be anything maybe even thought about, right?
Yeah, and what we're talking about is not really rocket science. It's basically good leadership, good management.
Yeah.
We want to treat our people well. We want to lead with humility. We want to lead with respect for others. We want others to be successful. This is a little odd. I had this thought earlier today about the analogy, and this is sort of stretching things a little bit, but life can't continue unless an organism is not going to continue, or a species is not going to continue unless it can regenerate, right? And so the same is true, I think, for nonprofit organizations. If we have a cause in the community that's important, we're not going to be able to continue pursuing that cause unless we can regenerate the talent and the leadership that we need. And there's so many ways that this work intersects with other things that we're already doing. We're already doing strategic planning. We're already doing financial modeling. We're already doing, we should be doing talent development. The more that we can be really good managers and good leaders of the people, which are our most important asset, then the easier this succession planning thing is going to be.
Yeah. And I think as we think about the strategic aspect of planning and asking questions before a transition is a window of opportunity. And you hear board members say, oh, not on my watch, because it's a lot of work to replace a CEO, and it's work they may or may not be ready to do.
Yeah.
But it's a great moment to really be asking questions, especially if you've had a long time leader, about, this is how we've always done this work. Should we step back and think about it a little more when we have this window of opportunity that's open? Should we be looking at restructuring the job? Should we be looking at working more closely with a partner? Do we still want to do this, pursue the mission the same way it's been? So that's why it can be very strategic, but planning ahead of time to say, let's ask these questions. So we're not making it a threat, but just a reflection and being thoughtful and intentional about how to move that mission forward.
Yeah.
And Julia, if I could just jump in with one other thought about your question, how can we create some standards to move this all forward? In the work that we do as consultants, we're working, of course, directly with organizations, and we're trying to get this information out to organizations. But we can also get this information out to other consultants. And we can try to create and support, a broader community of practice, if you will, of consultants who are thinking, not in lockstep, because in every organization is different. Every circumstance that we come across is going to be different. So you can't apply a single set of rules across the board everywhere. But if we can be thinking holistically about this framework of succession planning that we've been discussing today, and share that with other consultants and spread the word that way, then that's another way to help advance this process. And that's one of the things that Third Sector Company does, is work with consultants as well as with organizations.
Well, I think we'll be talking about that as we wrap up, because you do have a boot camp coming up, which I want to spend a little bit of time on. But I appreciate you saying that, Randy, because again, it's in so many ways, this is a new concept. And it's not just an interim issue, and succession planning is not just babysitting until you find that next person. Man, Julia B, I don't know. You've been with me in spirit for board meetings because I think I've heard or maybe even said, oh no, not on my watch. Hold that CEO to their feet to the fire. We don't want to go through that. And so that's true. I mean, I've been in those rooms where it's just like, no, please, even if that CEO is not doing a great job or they've mentally started to disengage or check out for a myriad of reasons, the fear of bringing in somebody new or going through that process is so debilitating for many, many boards. And so this is a real issue.
Yeah. Yeah, they want to avoid it because it's hard to change. And if your organization, if you don't have the people sort of behind you in the organization that you're really comfortable with someone else stepping up, that makes it that much harder. But if you know you've got a great team and and your CEO just took a 3-month sabbatical and things were great, then it's a different story.
Yeah, it's different. Okay, so you've sold me on this concept. Where were you many moons ago when I had, as a board member, had to tackle this issue with my fellow board members? So let's get to this next question, which is really, it's really important because how much time and what is this process going to cost? I mean, because I don't think this is a one and done thing. I loved both of you saying this is more of a mindset and it is a principle of value. So, Randy, what do you see as is how we should plan for the cost and the time of getting this in place?
Well, it's with the word holistic that we've been talking about, that implies that there's a comprehensive, there's a wide ranging scope of activities that can be involved. So to be fully in pursuit of this idea of creating a culture that values talent continuity, it's not a one and done thing. It is a state of mind. Now, within that, there are some specific things that can be done as pieces, and I'll let Julia talk about that in a second. But I'll say that the single quickest thing that you can do as an organization that won't cost you anything is to take the time, and it won't take a lot of time. Take the time to pull together in one secure location all of the essential information that is necessary for the organization to run smoothly. In the case of, say, a key leadership vacancy, and I'm talking about information like who has access to get into the building. What are the contracts that we have as an organization? What are the top contributors to this organization, and what is the status of their contributions? Who does the payroll? Where are the payroll? All of this sort of key information that if there were, in the case of an emergency, if there were a sudden leadership change, imagine how much easier it would be for whoever is stepping into that position to have all the information at their fingertips. And it's sort of like estate planning, right? Pulling together the information that you need in the process of settling an estate. But we want to make sure that information is gathered, it's kept secure, it's made available to the right people, and it's kept current. That is not going to cost you anything to do, and it can be done in a matter of weeks, if not days. So that's one aspect, and I know Julia's had a lot of experience working with different customers on different aspects of this, so she can have another perspective to add as well.
Yeah, so for the small organizations, that information inventory is critical. If you have a bigger organization where you have a human resources officer and a CFO and an operations, you probably have enough staff that it's not as important, but still things that the CEO does. What we find, we've talked about this, instead of being a process, is it's more of a hub that you can enter in from multiple different angles, because every organization has a different need and a different pain point. So to your question about time and cost, I think about the tactical pieces, the emergency plan, the succession policies, the sort of the 3 to 5 year milestones plan. That's roughly the time and cost of doing a decent strategic plan, not one of these full years, probably several months, and it's probably in the same time price range. And I'm hesitant to give dollars because every market has a very different set of pricing on it, but that gives you a comparison on it. The strategic parts, though, that's talking about shifting culture, how you talk about it, how you measure, how you develop people. There's frameworks you can help put into place, but then this is work your organization, to your point, just keeps working on over time. It sort of never goes away, building into it.
Right. I think that's an interesting aspect is kind of goes back to this, you used the word culture, I use the word mindset, that it's not a one and done, as Randy mentioned, that it's something that you keep moving forward is a best practice. And so it's very, very interesting. I want to spend a little bit of time before we let you, both of you go. I could spend all day with you. I'm fascinated by this whole conversation. And we got this hilarious but true comment that came in from one of our viewers that said that Succession, the TV show, taught her a lot about wealth, power, and even fundraising. So I just had to throw that in because I just think it's so funny. Succession Planning Consultant Bootcamp. Randy, you mentioned that this is a new dawn for consultants into the nonprofit sector to understand this process, to understand what some of these things look like. Talk to us about this boot camp that's coming up April 16th through 17th.
Thank you. It's a 2 half-day sessions that'll be online, so people can participate from anywhere. And we spend the time, a good bit of the time, on some contextual grounding to help set the stage for this way of thinking about succession planning. And then we also spend some time on practical aspects. We actually offer a framework of 5 different components, 5 different elements of a holistic succession planning framework that consultants are free to apply as they think best within their particular consulting situations. And so it's a great couple of half days, a lot of smart people on the screen. Julia and some other colleagues of ours get together and we present our experiences and our assessments of the different strategies that people can apply. And we would just invite any consultant that has an interest in this topic to come join us and help us all get smarter about this.
Okay, I got to throw a wrench into the whole thing is, what if you're not a consultant and you're a CEO and you've watched this episode or you've been hearing about this and you want to learn for your own organization? Is this a good fit or not?
I think this would be a good opportunity to pick up some really insightful information. Just know that the presentation is intended to really inform the consulting community, but information is good for everybody, I think.
Okay.
And it's very conversational. It's not, you sit, we talk, right? There's a whole lot of opportunities for folks to share, and it's the framework is developing. So we've been modifying and adjusting as we go because people bring a lot to this. And though we haven't talked about it, there's also a whole section about the board in there too.
Good. I think that's that's so important. Well, this has just been a wonderful, wonderful opportunity for us to learn more about this. I feel like we're in the middle of this new discovery, a new era for this concept. And it shouldn't be a new concept, but it certainly is for so many nonprofits and for our third sector. We've been joined today by the brilliant Randy Brinson, Senior Strategist for Third Sector Company. And you can learn more about Third Sector Company and even look to register for that boot camp at thirdsectorcompany.com. Julia Burns, gotta love anybody whose name is Julia, first and foremost. A partner with Clarity. Thank you for joining us and talking about this thing that we need to be talking about, Julia. I'm so delighted that you could join us. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you.
It's been
Thank
a
you
lot
very
of
much.
fun. Yeah, and we will be having more of these conversations because Third Sector is one of our valued presenting sponsors, along with Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, JMT Consulting, Your Part-Time Controller, and Fundraisers Friday. These are the folks that really help elevate our sector and help us do better so that we can achieve our mission, vision, and values. And so they're certainly an incredible part of our team and the work that we do here on the Nonprofit Show. As we end each and every episode, we have this mantra. And today I'm thinking about CEOs and boards and leadership. And the mantra is this: to stay well so you can do well. Thanks, everyone.